The shuttle was falling apart. Metal screamed as the hull tore open. Captain Lisa Morgan held tight to her seat while the world spun around her. Red lights flashed everywhere. Alarms were so loud she could barely think. "Everyone hold on," Lisa shouted over the noise. Her knuckles were white from gripping the armrests. The research ship Horizon had been studying this part of space for half a year. Everything had been fine until the magnetic storm hit them without warning. Now they were crashing onto the planet below. The shuttle hit the trees hard. Branches as thick as telephone poles smashed against the windows. The craft tumbled over and over. Lisa saw the medical section break away from the main ship. It spun off into the red and green jungle below. Her heart dropped into her stomach. Sophie Blake was in that medical bay. The young scientist had been doing a routine health check when the storm struck. Now she was gone, falling somewhere into the deadly forest. Everything went black for a moment. When Lisa opened her eyes again, she was hanging upside down. Blood dripped from a cut on her forehead. The straps of her seat were the only things keeping her from falling. Half the crew was knocked out cold. The others were groaning and moving slowly. Lisa hit the release button on her harness. She dropped hard onto what used to be the ceiling. Her military training kicked in right away despite the ringing in her ears. She had been a soldier before becoming a ship captain. Those skills were going to save their lives now. "Everyone report in," Lisa called out. Her voice was rough from breathing smoke. One by one, her crew answered. Jake Rivers, the pilot, had hurt his shoulder badly. It hung at a wrong angle. Carlos Martinez, the engineer, was bruised all over but could still move. Nina Shepard, who handled communications, had hit her head and looked confused. Ryan Cole, their security officer, was already standing and checking the weapons storage. The medical bay came off during the fall, Carlos said. He was looking at a small scanner he had pulled from the wreck. It landed about 40 kilometers to the northeast. The emergency signal is still working, but it's weak. Lisa felt ice water run through her veins. Sophie was inside. Nobody said anything. They all knew what that meant. This planet was called Kepler 442b. The survey teams had named it a Deathworld for good reason. The robot scouts had found over 2,000 different types of predators. Each one was more dangerous than anything that had ever lived on Earth. The gravity here was stronger than normal. The air was safe to breathe, but it had spores that made people see things that were not real. The temperature went up and down by 40 degrees between day and night. Sophie Blake was 26 years old. She came from Portland and had never even held a gun before. Now she was alone somewhere in that nightmare jungle. "We need to get ready to move," Lisa said firmly. "Nina, you stay here with the shuttle. Try to get the emergency beacon working so the main ship can find us. Everyone else, grab everything you can carry." "We leave in 10 minutes, Ryan stepped forward. His face was serious. "Captain, the rules say we should wait here for rescue. We don't have the right equipment to walk 40 kilometers through this kind of danger." Lisa looked him straight in the eyes. Something in her gaze made him take a step back. "She's one of our crew, Ryan. We don't leave our people behind." "Not while I'm still breathing." The security officer nodded slowly. "Yes, Captain." While the crew got ready, Lisa checked the information about the planet on her wrist computer. Kepler 442b was a world where evolution had gone crazy. The predators here hunted in groups. They used simple tools. Scientists had watched them set traps for their prey. The biggest creatures weighed over 3 tons and could tear through metal like paper. But Lisa Morgan had grown up in the ruins of Detroit. She had fought in the Outer Colonies War for 2 tours. Once she had walked 40 miles through a poison gas storm to save her unit. She had faced death before and lived to tell about it. Sophie Blake was 26 years old, smart, kind, and liked to hum old songs from Earth when she worked. She had joined the mission to study alien life. She wanted to make discoveries that would help humanity learn new things. She did not deserve to die alone and scared on a planet that wanted to kill her. Lisa checked her rifle to make sure it had power. She strapped a long knife to her belt. Then she led her team out into the red jungle as the 2 suns started to go down toward the horizon. They had maybe 12 hours before the sky turned dark. On Kepler 442b, humans did not survive the night. The creatures that came out after sunset were the worst of all. They were bigger, faster, and hungrier than anything that moved during the day. The jungle was thick and hot. The trees were taller than any building Lisa had ever seen. Vines hung between them like cables. The ground was covered in plants that moved even though there was no wind. Everything was either red or green or some color in between. The air smelled strange, like metal and flowers mixed together. Strange sounds came from all directions, roars and screams and clicking noises. Things moved in the shadows between the trees. Lisa could feel eyes watching them. "Lots of eyes. Stay close," she told her team. "Don't touch anything unless I say it's safe. If something attacks, shoot to kill and keep moving. We can't stop for anything." They moved through the jungle in a tight group. Ryan walked in front, his weapon ready. Lisa stayed in the middle with Jake, who was trying hard not to show how much pain he was in. Carlos brought up the rear, watching behind them. The scanner said they had covered 3 kilometers in the first hour. That meant they had 37 more to go. At this speed, it would take them more than 12 hours. They would be caught in the jungle after dark. "We need to move faster," Lisa said. "Captain Jake can't go much faster," Carlos replied quietly. "His shoulder is getting worse." Lisa looked at the pilot. His face was white and covered in sweat. He was biting his lip to keep from crying out. But when he saw her looking, he straightened up. "I can keep going," Jake said. "Don't slow down for me." They pushed on. The jungle seemed to get thicker with every step. Ryan had to use his knife to cut through some of the vines. Several times they had to go around massive trees that blocked their path. Once they found a clearing, but Ryan held up his hand to stop them. "Predator feeding ground," he said quietly, pointing at the bones scattered across the open space. Some of the bones were huge. Others were small. All of them had been cracked open to get at the marrow inside. They went around the clearing, staying in the thick forest where they had more cover. The sun was starting to get lower in the sky. The light was turning orange and red. Long shadows stretched between the trees. The sounds of the jungle were changing. The day creatures were getting quiet. New sounds were starting up. Deeper sounds. Hungrier sounds. Then Carlos stepped on something that was not solid ground. The earth collapsed under his feet. He dropped into a hole that appeared out of nowhere. Lisa lunged forward and grabbed his arm, but she was not fast enough. Carlos fell 10 feet down onto sharpened wooden stakes. The engineer screamed. The sound echoed through the jungle. Every creature within a mile would have heard it. Ryan and Lisa pulled Carlos out of the pit as carefully as they could. But it was too late. The stakes had gone through his body in 3 places. Blood poured out of the wounds. "Too much blood, I'm sorry," Carlos whispered. His eyes were already starting to lose focus. "I should have been more careful." "Don't talk," Lisa said. She was trying to stop the bleeding, but her hands were shaking. "Save your strength." But they both knew the truth. There was too much damage. Even with a full medical team, Carlos would not make it. Out here in the jungle with just a basic first aid kit, he had minutes at best. Carlos grabbed Lisa's hand. "Find Sophie. Get her home. Promise me." "I promise," Lisa said. Tears were running down her face. Carlos smiled. Then the light went out of his eyes. He was gone. They did not have time to bury him. The sounds in the jungle were getting louder and closer. Something had heard the scream and was coming to investigate. Lisa said a quick prayer over Carlos. Then they had to leave his body behind. It was one of the hardest things she had ever done. "That pit was a trap," Ryan said as they moved away. "Something made it on purpose. The predators here are smart enough to build traps for prey." Lisa felt cold despite the jungle heat. They were not just dealing with animals. They were dealing with intelligent hunters who knew how to kill efficiently. The scanner showed they had covered 8 kilometers. They had 32 more to go. The sky was getting dark. They needed to find shelter fast. Sophie Blake woke up to the sound of something big moving through the bushes nearby. Her head hurt so badly she wanted to throw up. When she tried to move, every muscle in her body screamed. The medical bay had crashed between 2 giant trees. It was tilted at a strange angle. The bark of the trees glowed with some kind of fungus that gave off blue light. She could smell blood. Her own blood. Sophie took a moment to check herself over carefully. Her left ankle was swollen up like a balloon. It might be broken. Cuts covered both her arms. Medical supplies had fallen out of the emergency kit and were scattered all over the floor. The walls of the bay had held together, but the door was jammed shut. Outside, something made a low growling sound. Sophie stopped breathing for a second. She had studied all the animals on Kepler 442b during the long trip here. She knew how the flying razor-wing raptors hunted. She knew which areas the giant armored beasts defended. She knew how the shade stalkers worked together in packs. She knew that 97% of the meat-eaters on this planet thought humans looked like food. She also knew that panicking would kill her faster than anything else out there. Moving as quietly as she could, Sophie grabbed the medical scanner and turned it on. The screen lit up and showed her body readings and what was around her outside. What she saw made her blood turn to ice. 3 large heat shapes were circling the medical bay. Each one weighed about 200 kilograms. The way they moved told her they were pack hunters, shade stalkers. Sophie had written a whole research paper about shade stalkers back on the ship. They were ambush predators with 6 legs and flexible spines. Their jaws could bite through bone like it was soft butter. They mostly hunted at dawn and dusk. They used complex teamwork to drive prey into killing zones. They were also curious creatures who often checked out strange objects before deciding whether to attack them. The medical bay was definitely strange. One of the creatures pressed its face against the window. Sophie got her first real look at a shade stalker up close. Its eyes were deep amber yellow with vertical slits for pupils. Its skin was red and black in patches, perfect for hiding in the jungle. When it opened its mouth, she counted 4 rows of sharp teeth. It stared at her for a long time. It tilted its head to one side like a dog trying to understand something new. Then it seemed to lose interest. It turned away and walked back to its pack. Within a few minutes, all 3 heat signatures had moved away into the thick plants. Sophie let out a breath she had not known she was holding. The scanner said it was mid-afternoon. That meant she had maybe 6 hours until the night hunters came out. The medical bay's emergency beacon was still working, but the power cell was damaged. It would last maybe 18 hours before dying completely. She had to believe her crew was alive somewhere, had to believe Lisa would come looking for her. But 40 kilometers through this jungle could take days, even for trained soldiers. Sophie did not have days. She had to start moving. Using the tools in the medical bay, Sophie made a brace for her ankle out of bandages and metal strips. She filled a pack with water cleaning tablets, emergency food bars, medical supplies, and a flare gun with 3 shots. The medical bay had a small plasma cutter for emergency surgeries. She took that too and set it to spread the beam as wide as possible. It was not much of a weapon, but it was better than nothing. Before she left, Sophie did something that would end up saving her life later, though she did not know it at the time. She turned on the medical bay's bio-tracker and set it to send constant updates. If anyone found the wreck, they would be able to follow her movements through the jungle by tracking her life signs in the computer. Then, she forced the jammed door open and stepped out into a nightmare. The jungle was beautiful in a terrible way. Trees reached hundreds of feet up into the sky. Their tops filtered the sunlight into beams of gold and red. Vines as thick as her arm hung between the branches. Many of them moved a little even though there was no breeze. The air was wet and heavy. It was filled with sounds of creatures she could not see but could feel watching her. Sophie picked a direction based on the last navigation reading from the medical bay and started walking. She moved slowly, testing each step, trying to make as little noise as possible. Her training in studying alien life helped her. She could tell which plants were safe to touch and which would blister her skin or make her sick. She found water by looking for certain kinds of insects that gathered near it. She stayed away from open clearings because those were likely hunting grounds. 3 hours after she started walking, Sophie realized something was following her. The creature was small by this planet's standards. It was no bigger than a wolf. It moved through the trees parallel to her path. It never quite came into view, but it was always there. Sophie caught glimpses of reddish-brown fur. She heard the soft sound of feet padding on bark. She saw branches shake as it jumped from tree to tree. She held the plasma cutter tighter and kept walking. The creature followed her until the sun started going down. It stayed about 20 meters away the whole time. It never came closer. It never tried to attack. It just watched. As the light began to fade, Sophie knew she had to find shelter. The night predators would wake up soon. She had no false ideas about surviving a night in the open. She spotted a huge fallen log that had rotted out on the inside. She crawled in through the opening. It was cramped and smelled bad, but the entrance was small enough that nothing big could follow her inside. She turned on a small glow stick from the medical kit. It lit up the inside of the log with pale blue light. Then she sat with her back against the wood, plasma cutter in her lap, and tried not to think about all the ways she was probably going to die. Outside, the jungle came alive with new sounds. Roars and screams and the crashing of huge bodies through the undergrowth. Something enormous walked past her hiding spot. It was so close she could smell its strong animal scent through the cracks in the log. And through all of it, She could hear the soft breathing of the creature that had followed her all day. It was curled up just outside the log's entrance, protecting her. Sophie did not understand why. Every piece of scientific knowledge she had said that predators did not protect prey. They hunted it. They killed it. They ate it. That was how nature worked, but this creature was doing something different. It had chosen to follow her instead of hunting her. It had chosen to guard her instead of attacking her. Why? Sophie thought about it while the night sounds raged around her shelter. Maybe the creature was young and curious. Maybe it had lost its family and was lonely. Maybe it saw her as something interesting instead of something to eat. Or maybe, just maybe, intelligence and kindness were not just human traits. That thought should have been crazy. But sitting in a rotted log on an alien world while a predator stood guard outside, it made a strange kind of sense. Sophie must have fallen asleep at some point because she woke with a start to find gray morning light coming through the log's opening. She was still alive. The creature was still there, sitting patiently outside like it had been there all night. When she crawled out, the creature looked at her with golden eyes that seemed almost happy to see her. In the daylight, Sophie could see it more clearly. It looked sort of like the dire wolves from Earth's prehistoric times, but sleeker and more muscled. Its fur was reddish-brown with darker stripes running down its back. Its paws were huge with claws that pulled back into the toes, but what struck her most were its eyes. They held an awareness that made her scientist brain buzz with questions. "Good morning," Sophie said softly. She knew it probably could not understand her words, but she needed to say something. The creature's ears pointed forward. Then it did something that made Sophie's heart skip. It huffed softly, stood up, and walked toward her. It stopped just out of reach. It was showing trust. Slowly, very slowly, Sophie reached out her hand. The creature sniffed it carefully. Then it pushed its head against her palm. Its fur was rough but warm. She could feel the strong muscles underneath. This was a top predator, a creature that could kill her easily with one bite. Instead, it leaned into her touch like a puppy wanting affection. "You're young," Sophie realized as she studied its size and proportions. "You're not fully grown yet." The creature made a sound that was half chirp and half growl. Then it turned and started walking away. After a few steps, it looked back at her like it was waiting for something. Sophie understood. It wanted her to follow. Every logical part of her brain screamed that this was insane. Following an alien predator deeper into the jungle was suicide. But this creature had protected her through the night. It had chosen to help her instead of hurt her. And Sophie had always trusted her feelings about animals. She followed. The creature led her through the jungle with clear purpose. It picked paths that avoided the thickest undergrowth. It stopped often to make sure she was keeping up. When her hurt ankle slowed her down, it waited patiently. Hours went by and Sophie began to understand that the creature was taking her somewhere specific. They reached a stream. Sophie dropped to her knees and drank after treating the water with tablets from her pack. The creature drank beside her, completely relaxed. When they started moving again, Sophie noticed something strange. The jungle had become quieter. Lisa Morgan and her team had been moving through the jungle for 6 hours. They had already lost 2 people. Carlos Martinez, the engineer, had been the first. He had stepped into a trap hidden in the ground. Sharpened stakes had pierced his body. By the time they pulled him out, he had lost too much blood. He died with Lisa holding his hand while she whispered that she was sorry. The second loss was Nina Shepard. They had left her behind at the shuttle to work on the emergency beacon. Her last radio message had been cut short by screaming and the sound of metal being torn apart. Something had found the crash site. Lisa had to make the hardest choice of her command career. She kept moving forward instead of going back. Going back meant Sophie would die for sure. Now there were only 3 of them left. Lisa, Jake Rivers with his badly hurt shoulder, and Ryan Cole, who moved through the jungle like a ghost even while carrying twice as much gear as anyone else. They were following the signal from the medical bay's beacon, but it was getting weaker. Ryan thought they had covered maybe 15 kilometers. That left 25 more to go. Night was falling fast. "We need to find shelter," Jake said. His face was pale from pain. "Captain, we can't keep moving in the dark." Lisa wanted to argue, wanted to push forward until they found Sophie or died trying. But Jake was right. Moving through this jungle at night was the same as killing themselves. She had already lost too many people. "There." Ryan pointed to some rocks barely visible through the plants. "Natural cave. We can defend it." They made their way to the cave and checked it carefully for anything living inside before setting up defenses. Ryan set up motion sensors at the entrance while Lisa worked on Jake's shoulder. The pilot had stopped complaining hours ago. That worried her more than when he had been groaning in pain. As darkness came, the jungle changed completely. The plants began to glow, creating a landscape that looked like a fever dream, beautiful and deadly at the same time. Lisa sat at the cave entrance with her rifle across her knees. She stared out at the alien world that had killed 3 of her crew. "She's alive," Ryan said quietly as he sat down beside her. "I can feel it." Lisa looked at him. "That's not very scientific, Cole. Neither is dragging a wounded crew across 40 kilometers of Deathworld based on hope, Captain." He smiled a little. "But here we are." They sat without talking for a while. They listened to the sounds of the night predators starting their hunts. Lisa thought about Sophie. She wondered if she had found shelter, if she was scared, if she was hurt. "She's tougher than she looks," Lisa said, talking more to herself than to Ryan. "When we were mapping the Aldebaran system, she spent 3 days in a broken pressure suit, cataloging tiny organisms. Never complained once. Just kept working." "You care about her," Ryan said. It was not a question. Lisa was quiet for a long moment. "I care about all my crew, but her more than the others." She did not deny it. Could not deny it after everything that had happened. "When we get her back, I'm going to tell her that." "When?" Ryan agreed. "Not if." The motion sensors beeped. Something was coming toward the cave. Lisa and Ryan were on their feet in a second, weapons up. The sensors showed multiple contacts moving fast. Lisa's finger rested on the trigger as shapes came out of the glowing jungle. Shade stalkers, 6 of them moving together like a trained military unit. They stopped just outside shooting range. Their amber eyes glowed in the darkness as they studied the humans with disturbing intelligence. "Do not fire unless they attack," Lisa said quietly. "We don't have enough ammunition to waste." The stalkers circled the cave entrance, testing the defenses. One of them walked up to a motion sensor, sniffed it, then deliberately stepped around it. Lisa's blood ran cold. These creatures understood human technology. Then, as suddenly as they had appeared, the stalkers pulled back into the jungle and vanished among the glowing plants. "They're learning," Ryan said. His voice was tight. "They're learning about us." Lisa checked the beacon signal on her wrist computer. Still sending, still pointing northeast, still 25 kilometers away. "We move at first light," she said, "and we don't stop until we find her." Behind them in the cave, Jake Rivers started coughing up blood. Lisa rushed to his side. The pilot's face was gray. His breathing was shallow and rapid. Internal bleeding. It must have been going on for hours, but Jake had hidden it, not wanting to slow them down. "Jake, why didn't you say something?" Lisa asked as she tried to make him more comfortable. "Because you would have stopped," Jake whispered. "And Sophie needs you more than I do. You need medical help." "Real medical help," Jake smiled weakly. "Not going to get that out here, Captain." "We both know it." He grabbed her hand. "Promise me you'll get Sophie. Promise me this wasn't for nothing." "I promise," Lisa said. Tears were running down her face for the second time that day. "Good." Jake's eyes started to close. "Tell her I said hi. He died 2 hours before dawn." Lisa and Ryan moved his body to the back of the cave and covered it with rocks. It was not much of a grave, but it was the best they could do. When the first light appeared on the horizon, only 2 of them walked out of that cave. Lisa felt like she was made of broken glass, held together by pure will. But she kept moving. For Carlos, for Nina, for Jake, for Sophie. The jungle in daylight was slightly less terrifying than at night, but only slightly. The creatures that hunted during the day were smaller but often more aggressive. Lisa and Ryan moved carefully, weapons ready, stopping often to check the scanner. 10 kilometers from the medical bay's last position, they heard something ahead. Movement in the thick undergrowth. Something big. Ryan held up his hand for them to stop. They crouched behind a fallen tree and watched. A pack of creatures emerged into a small clearing. They looked like crosses between bears and giant lizards. Each one was easily 3 meters long. They had scales and fur mixed together on their bodies. Their mouths were full of teeth designed for tearing meat, and they were fighting over territory. 2 of the creatures were locked in combat while the others watched. They bit and clawed at each other, shaking the ground with their weight. Blood flew through the air. One of them went down hard and did not get back up. The winner roared its victory to the jungle. Lisa and Ryan waited for the pack to move on before continuing. They gave the clearing a wide path. 5 more kilometers, Ryan said, checking the scanner. The signal is getting stronger. Hope rose in Lisa's chest. They were close. So close. Then everything went wrong. The attack came from above. Creatures dropped from the trees onto them like living missiles. Lisa barely had time to raise her rifle before one of them hit her, knocking her flat. She rolled away and fired, hitting it in the center of mass. The creature screamed and fell back. Ryan was already fighting 2 of them. His knife flashed as he blocked and stabbed. More were coming. These were not shade stalkers. These were something else, something faster and meaner. Run, Ryan shouted as he shot another one. Get to Sophie. I'm not leaving you. That's an order, Captain. Ryan's voice had the tone of a man who knew he was already dead. Go. Lisa hesitated for 1 second. One terrible second where she had to choose between her crew and her mission. Between saving Ryan and saving Sophie. She ran. Behind her, she heard Ryan fighting. Heard his gun firing again and again. Heard his scream as the creatures overwhelmed him. Then heard nothing. Lisa ran through the jungle with tears streaming down her face. Ran until her lungs burned and her legs felt like they would give out. Ran because if she stopped, Ryan's sacrifice would be for nothing. The scanner showed 3 kilometers to the medical bay. 2 kilometers. 1 kilometer. She burst into a clearing and saw it. The medical bay was wedged between 2 trees, damaged but intact. The beacon was still blinking. Lisa ran to the door and wrenched it open. Empty. Sophie was gone. Lisa wanted to scream. Wanted to break something. Wanted to give up. She had lost everyone. Carlos, Nina, Jake, Ryan. All of them dead so she could reach this spot. And Sophie was not even here. Then she saw the bio-tracker display still running on the medical bay's computer. Sophie had turned it on before she left. The tracker showed her life signs moving through the jungle. She was alive. She was 15 kilometers to the northeast. She was moving. Lisa checked her rifle. Half a charge left. She checked her supplies. Enough food and water for 2 days if she was careful. She checked herself. Exhausted, injured, running on fumes. She started walking northeast. She had made promises to 4 dead people. She was going to keep them even if it killed her. The jungle seemed to sense her determination, or maybe it just sensed weakness. Either way, the attack started soon after she left the medical bay. First, it was small creatures that jumped out of the undergrowth. Lisa shot them without slowing down. Then it was something bigger that stalked her through the trees. She put 3 shots into it before it fell. Her rifle's charge was getting low. 10 kilometers from Sophie's position, according to the tracker, Lisa stumbled into a dried stream bed. She was so tired she did not notice the creatures surrounding her until it was too late. Shade stalkers. 8 of them. The same pack from last night, or maybe a different one. It did not matter. They had her surrounded and they knew it. Lisa raised her rifle even though she knew it was pointless. The charge indicator was flashing red. She had maybe 1 good shot left. 8 predators meant 7 of them would reach. Lisa stared in complete shock as a creature half the size of the shade stalkers tore through them, like they were made of paper. It moved with a speed and precision that made her military training look clumsy. Every movement had a purpose. Every strike was lethal. This was not the wild fury of a mindless beast. This was an expert at work. In less than a minute, 6 of the 8 stalkers lay dead or dying on the ground. The last 2 ran for their lives into the jungle. Lisa did not blame them for running. The reddish-brown creature stood among the bodies, breathing hard, covered in blood that was not its own. Its golden eyes swept across the stream bed and found Lisa. Then they looked past her, to where Sophie Blake stood at the edge of the clearing, alive and whole. "Don't shoot!" Sophie shouted as she limped forward. "He's with me!" Lisa's legs almost gave out from relief. Sophie was alive. Hurt, but alive, walking toward her with a confidence Lisa had never seen in the young scientist before. And beside her walked the creature that had just painted the ground red to save them both. "Sophie," Lisa managed to say. Her voice was shaking. "What is that?" Sophie knelt beside the creature and ran her hand along its blood-covered fur. "This is my friend. He found me after the crash. He's been protecting me ever since." The creature looked at Sophie with obvious affection in its eyes. Then it turned its gaze back to Lisa. The message was clear. These humans were under its protection now. Nothing would be allowed to harm them. "Are you okay?" Sophie asked, moving toward Lisa. "Where are the others?" Lisa's face must have told the story because Sophie stopped walking. Her expression changed from relief to horror. "How many?" Sophie whispered. "All of them. Carlos, Nina, Jake, Ryan, all gone." Lisa felt like she might collapse. "I lost everyone trying to reach you." Sophie's eyes filled with tears. She closed the distance between them and wrapped her arms around Lisa. They held each other in that stream bed surrounded by dead predators while the jungle buzzed with life around them. "I'm so sorry," Sophie said against Lisa's shoulder. "This is all my fault." "No." Lisa pulled back to look at Sophie's face. "This is the planet's fault. This is bad luck's fault, not yours, never yours." The creature huffed softly, reminding them it was still there. Sophie wiped her eyes and turned to it. "We need to call for help," Sophie said. "Can you keep us safe?" "While we do that?" The creature tilted its head like it was considering the question. Then it moved to the edge of the stream bed and sat down facing the jungle. A guardian standing watch. Sophie pulled out her wrist computer and activated the emergency beacon with the strongest signal she could manage. The main ship should pick this up. If they're in range, they'll send a dropship. "How long?" Lisa asked. "Could be an hour. Could be 6 hours. Depends on where they are in orbit." Lisa checked her rifle. The charge was almost gone. "We better hope it's closer to 1 hour." They found a spot with good cover behind some rocks and settled in to wait. The creature remained at its post, unmoving except for its ears, which swiveled constantly to catch sounds from the jungle. "Tell me about him," Lisa said quietly. "How did this happen?" Sophie told her the story. The crash, waking up in the medical bay, the shade stalkers investigating, finding the young predator following her, the night in the log, the realization that it was protecting her instead of hunting her. "He lost his family," Sophie explained. "I think he's alone just like I was. We found each other when we both needed someone." Lisa looked at the creature with new understanding. It was young, probably barely more than a juvenile by its species standards, but it had more courage than most humans she had known, and it had chosen to protect Sophie instead of seeing her as prey. "What are you going to call him?" Lisa asked. Sophie smiled through her tears. "I've been calling him Red, for his fur, for the blood he spilled protecting me." As if hearing its name, Red turned its head to look at them. Its golden eyes were warm and intelligent. Then it turned back to watching the jungle. They waited in silence for a while. Lisa used the time to bandage some of her wounds. Sophie shared her water and emergency rations. The food tasted like cardboard, but Lisa was too hungry to care. "I thought about you," Sophie said suddenly. "When I thought I was going to die, I thought about you and wished I had told you something important." Lisa looked at her. "What?" "That I love you. I've loved you since we mapped the Aldebaran system. Maybe before that. And I was so scared that I'd die without ever telling you." Lisa felt her heart do something complicated in her chest. "Sophie, You don't have to say anything back," Sophie interrupted. "I just needed you to know. After everything that happened, after thinking I'd lost you, I can't keep it inside anymore." Lisa reached over and took Sophie's hand. "I love you too. I have for a long time. I just never had the courage to say it. Then when the shuttle crashed and you were gone, all I could think about was getting you back. Nothing else mattered. Not the mission, not the ship, not even my own life. Just you." Sophie leaned in and kissed her. It was soft and gentle and tasted like salt from their tears. When they pulled apart, they were both smiling despite everything they had been through. Red made a soft chirping sound. It almost sounded approving. "I think he likes you," Sophie said. "The feeling is mutual. He saved both our lives." The sound of engines rumbled overhead. The dropship had arrived. Red stood up and growled. The sound was deep and made Lisa's bones vibrate. It was a warning. The creature did not understand what the dropship was. It only knew that something large and loud was descending toward its humans. "It's okay," Sophie said, walking over to Red. "That's our ride home. It's safe." Red looked at her with uncertainty in its eyes. Then it looked at the dropship as it landed in the stream bed. The wind from the engines blew debris everywhere. The creature crouched low, ready to fight or flee. The dropship's door opened. 2 crew members in full armor stepped out with weapons raised. They saw the dead stalkers, the blood-covered predator, and the 2 battered humans behind the rocks. "Stand down," Lisa called out. "Don't shoot the predator, it's friendly." The crew members looked confused, but they lowered their weapons. One of them spoke into a radio, probably reporting the strange situation to the pilot. Sophie knelt down in front of Red. The creature looked at her, then at the dropship, then back at her. Understanding seemed to dawn in its eyes. She was leaving, going back to her own kind, leaving him behind. "I have to go," Sophie whispered. Tears were running down her face. "This isn't my world, I can't stay." Red pressed its head against her chest. Sophie wrapped her arms around the creature and held it tight. "Thank you," she said. "Thank you for everything, for saving me, for protecting me, for being my friend when I thought I had no one." The creature pulled away and looked at Lisa. For a moment, woman and predator stared at each other. Some kind of understanding passed between them. Lisa nodded once. A promise. She would take care of Sophie, would protect her the way Red had protected her. Red huffed once in acknowledgement. Then it turned and walked into the jungle. Before the foliage swallowed it up, it looked back one last time. Sophie raised her hand in goodbye. Then Red was gone, disappearing into the red and green shadows of the deadly world that was its home. The crew members helped Lisa and Sophie onto the dropship. The interior was warm and clean and safe. Everything the jungle was not. As the ship lifted off, Sophie pressed her face against the window and watched the canopy recede below them. "Will he be okay?" Lisa asked, sitting beside her. "Yes," Sophie said with certainty. "He's strong and smart, and he knows how to survive. He'll find a new family eventually. Or maybe he'll become a legend. The lone guardian of the red jungle. You're going to miss him. Every day for the rest of my life." Lisa took Sophie's hand again and squeezed it. "We'll come back someday, just to visit, just to make sure he's okay." Sophie smiled through her tears. "I'd like that." The dropship climbed higher, breaking through the atmosphere. The main ship horizon was waiting in orbit, its lights shining like a beacon in the darkness of space. Home, safety, life. But Sophie kept her eyes on the planet below until it was just a red and green marble in the black. Somewhere down there, a young predator with reddish-brown fur and golden eyes was walking through his jungle. Alone again, but not forgotten. Never forgotten. On the main ship, the medical team took over. They treated Lisa and Sophie's injuries, gave them sedatives to help them sleep, and filled out reports about what had happened. The captain of the Horizon listened to Lisa's account with a grave expression. "You lost 4 crew members," he said. "I'm sorry, Lisa, that's a heavy burden to carry." "They died so Sophie could live," Lisa replied. "They made that choice knowing what it meant. I won't dishonor their sacrifice by regretting the mission." "What about the predator, the one that helped you?" "What about it? Should we note it in the planetary survey? Mark that region as containing an unusually intelligent and potentially friendly species?" Lisa thought about that for a long moment. "No, leave it out of the official reports. That creature saved our lives because it chose to, not because it's friendly to humans as a species. Other crews might go down there expecting to find a helpful predator and get killed. Better to leave the planet marked as a death world and let Red live in peace." The captain nodded. "Understood. The official report will note the crash, the deaths, and the rescue." "Hey," Sophie said softly. "Shouldn't you be resting?" Lisa sat down on the edge of the bed. "I could say the same to you." "What are you working on?" "My report. Well, not the official one. A personal one." Sophie turned the datapad so Lisa could see. I'm documenting everything that happened with Red, not for publication, just for me, so I never forget. Lisa read a few lines. Sophie's writing was clear and detailed, describing Red's behavior, his intelligence, his capacity for compassion. It read like a love letter to a friend who had changed her life. "It's beautiful," Lisa said. He was beautiful, in his own deadly way. Sophie set the datapad aside. "I keep thinking about him, wondering if he's okay, if he's eating enough, if he's lonely. He survived on that planet before he met you. He'll survive after, I know. It's just hard. I spent days with him. He became important to me in a way I can't really explain to anyone who wasn't there." Lisa understood. She had only seen Red for a few minutes, but even that brief encounter had left an impression. The creature had intelligence in its eyes, purpose in its actions. It was more than just an animal following instinct. "How long until we reach the next station?" Sophie asked. 3 weeks. "Then we have to submit our reports and wait for the review board to decide what happens next." "What do you think will happen?" Lisa was quiet for a moment. "They'll probably shut down the Kepler 442b survey. Too dangerous. 4 deaths in one incident is bad even by Deathworld standards. They might shut down the whole program and reassign us to safer systems." "Would that be so bad? After everything we've been through?" "No," Lisa admitted. "It wouldn't be bad at all. In fact, I'm thinking of requesting a transfer to a research station, somewhere quiet where the most dangerous thing is a broken coffee maker." Sophie laughed. It was the first time Lisa had heard her laugh since the crash. "That sounds perfect. Will you request a transfer for me too?" "If you want one, I do. But only if we're assigned to the same station. I'm not losing you now that I finally told you how I feel." Lisa leaned in and kissed her. "You're not losing me, ever. That's a promise." They spent the rest of the evening talking about the future, about what they would do when they got to the station, about the life they could build together away from death worlds and danger. It felt good to plan for something beyond survival. 3 weeks later, they docked at the station. The review board met with Lisa first. She told them everything that had happened, leaving out only the details about Red. The board members looked grim as she described the losses. "Captain Morgan, we've reviewed your decisions during the crisis," the lead board member said. "While we regret the loss of life, we find that you acted appropriately given the circumstances. You made difficult choices to save one crew member when saving everyone was impossible. That takes courage." "Thank you, sir," Lisa said. "But I don't feel courageous. I feel like I failed. Failure would have been losing everyone, including yourself. You brought one person home. That's not failure. That's a miracle." They granted her request for a transfer to a research station in a safe system. They did the same for Sophie. Within a month, they were settled into their new posts on a small station orbiting a blue star. The work was quiet and routine, exactly what they both needed after Kepler 442b. But Sophie never stopped thinking about Red. She finished her personal report and locked it away in encrypted files. She studied every piece of data about the predators of Kepler 442b that she could find. She wrote papers about animal intelligence and the capacity for cross-species bonding. Her work started getting attention from other scientists. One evening, 6 months after the crash, Sophie was reviewing some data when she made a discovery. The Horizon had left observation satellites in orbit around Kepler 442b before the crash. Those satellites were still functioning, still sending back data. And buried in that data was footage from cameras pointing at the planet's surface. Sophie pulled up the files and started searching. It took hours, but she finally found what she was looking for: video of the region where Red's den had been located. The quality was not great. The cameras were designed to track weather patterns and large-scale geological features, not individual animals. But Sophie had studied Red's movements for days. She knew how he walked, how he held himself. And there, moving through the jungle in footage from 2 weeks ago, was a creature that looked just like him. Red was alive. Sophie felt tears running down her face. She had known logically that Red would survive. But seeing proof, seeing him moving through his territory with that same confident grace made it real. She watched the footage over and over. In one clip, Red took down a creature twice his size with practiced ease. In another, he was marking territory on trees. In a third, he seemed to pause and look up at the sky, almost like he was thinking about something far away. "Is that him?" Lisa's voice came from the doorway. She had come to walk Sophie home after her shift. Yes, that's Red. He's alive and healthy, and he's claimed a huge territory for himself. Lisa walked over and watched the footage. He's gotten bigger. He's still growing. He might be twice that size in another year. His species doesn't reach full maturity until they're 5 or 6 years old. He looks good? Strong? He does. Sophie paused the video on a frame where Red was looking toward the camera. I want to go back, Lisa. I want to see him again. Lisa was quiet for a long moment. Are you sure? After everything that happened? I'm sure. Not right away. Maybe in a year or 2. But I want to go back. I want Red to know I didn't forget him. Then we'll go back together. I promised you that in the dropship, remember? Sophie turned and hugged Lisa tightly. Thank you. For everything. For coming to find me. For loving me. For understanding about Red. Always. Lisa said simply. 2 years later, they made good on that promise. They took a small research vessel back to Kepler 442b. Just the 2 of them and a pilot who stayed with the ship. They landed in a clearing near where Red's den had been. The pilot was nervous about leaving them alone on the Deathworld, but Lisa assured him they would be fine. They had equipment this time. Real equipment. Weapons, armor, medical supplies, emergency beacons. Everything they had lacked during the crash. But Sophie hoped they would not need any of it. They walked through the jungle slowly, carefully, stopping often to let Sophie check her tracking equipment. She was looking for signs of Red's territory. Marked trees, prey remains. Anything that would tell her he was nearby. It took 3 hours of searching before they found what they were looking for. Red was larger now, fully grown into his adult size. He stood almost as tall as Lisa at the shoulder and was powerfully built. His reddish-brown fur gleamed in the filtered sunlight. He was feeding on a kill when they found him, tearing meat from bones with efficient precision. Sophie's heart was pounding. Would Red remember her? It had been 2 years. That was a long time for any animal. Red? She called softly. The creature's head snapped up. He stared at them with those golden eyes, alert and wary. For a moment, Sophie thought he did not recognize her. Thought he saw them as threats or prey. Then Red made a sound Sophie had never heard him make before. A complex vocalization that was part chirp, part rumble, part something that sounded almost like joy. He ran toward them. Lisa tensed and reached for her weapon, but Sophie stopped her. Wait, just wait. Red stopped a few meters away. He was breathing hard, his whole body quivering with excitement. He lowered his head and huffed, the same gesture of trust he had shown Sophie 2 years ago. Sophie walked forward slowly. Hey, boy. Remember me? I came back like I promised. Red pressed his head against her, nearly knocking her over with the force of his affection. He was so much bigger now, so much stronger, but the gesture was the same. He remembered. He had not forgotten. Sophie wrapped her arms around his neck and cried. I missed you so much. I thought about you every day. Red pulled back and looked at Lisa. There was recognition in his eyes. He remembered her too. The other human who had come to find Sophie, who had made promises with her eyes. Lisa slowly extended her hand. Red sniffed it, then allowed her to pet his head. Good to see you again, Red. You've grown up. They spent hours with him. Sophie examined him carefully and was pleased to find he was healthy and well-fed. His territory was large and rich with prey. He had become one of the dominant predators in this region of the jungle, but he was still alone. No family yet? Sophie asked, already knowing the answer. Red's behavior around them was too focused. If he had a mate or offspring, he would be more protective, more aggressive. Red huffed and sat down, watching them with those intelligent eyes. Maybe next year, Sophie said. Maybe by the time we visit again, you'll have someone. They stayed until the sun began to set. Then they had to go. The pilot was getting nervous, and they did not want to risk being in the jungle after dark. Sophie hugged Red one last time. I'll come back. I promise. I'll always come back as long as you want me to. Red walked them to the edge of his territory. He stood watching as they made their way back to the landing site. When Sophie looked back, he was still there, a reddish-brown guardian standing among the red and green of his world. They visited Red every year after that. Sometimes just Sophie and Lisa. Sometimes they brought other researchers who wanted to study the intelligent predators of Kepler 442b under controlled conditions. Red tolerated the